We're back on the record in 14 Sarah 1432. Mr. Jones appears in custody. He's represented by Ms. Smith and also Mr. Colvin. Mr. Rubenstein and Mr. Wade are here for the people. We're outside the presence of our jury. Anything before I invite our jury back in?
I meet Mr. Wade and Ms. Platts. Other than that, I think we'll be good to go.
That's all, huh?
Sorry, Judge.
You're fine. Are we ready for our jury, Mr. Wade?
I think we are.
Mr. Colvin?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks. I'll go ahead and call for him. Please rise for our jury. Thank you. Please be seated. For the record, our jury is now back in the courtroom with us, and you can proceed with your direct whenever you're ready, Mr.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just have a few more questions, Ms. Platts. So you just described several situations where your dogs gave positive indications in a variety of situations.
Yes, sir.
One of those was a positive indication to the defendant's smell inside a burned car.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me any indication as to how does that happen? How do you know that the dog does that, and how can the dog do that?
I was reading an article and a study that the FBI did where they had blown up a big bomb, blew it up, and then took the fragments of that bomb and either put them in gasoline, burned them, or just took them straight from the explosion and used them. And they actually scented dogs on the fragments, and dogs were able to take trail, get enough scent off of those fragments to actually produce a trail to locate the people whose scent was involved with that. So read that, and then we did a couple of experiments in our area with our unit where we actually took items that the person had handled, clothing or tissue, and they had handled it, and then we burned those items up to ash, and then we used those to scent the dog, and the dog was able to replicate the same type of behavior that the FBI had seen with their dogs, which was the human scent survived combustion.
Okay. So, safe to say that a dog can smell things we can't?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any indication how a dog's sense of smell relates to ours?
Basically, science is showing down that it goes down to actual parts per trillion. So they can actually smell down into the parts per trillion.
As opposed to what can we measure if we smell something?
Probably parts per thousand.
Okay. So a significant difference from ours.
Yes, sir.
Certainly, and throughout this, either the dog smells something or the dog doesn't smell something. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There were times in this where You had things that were in a controlled environment, like the inside of Bob Scott RV or the inside of the Pepsi building, and the dog didn't give an indication.
Correct.
Why is that?
The dog didn't have a matching scent.
Okay. But outside in a burned car, the dog gave a positive indication.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How does the dog do these car trails? I mean, you talked about this jump trailing going down the highway. How does the dog do that?
The dog vehicles are not airtight. And I'm not sure if you've ever driven down the highway with your windows up and the air conditioning going, or just driving down the road with the windows up, and you pass a dead animal along the roadway. And you can actually all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, what is that smell doing in the car? It's a dead skunk or where it was along the highway. For all the smells that's coming into your car, you are getting smells that are exiting out of the vehicle through the vent system of the vehicle. So if I scent the dog and he has enough of your odor, wherever I've scented him on, to produce a trail, he's still going to follow your odor. The fact whether you were into a vehicle and drove away or you're walking along the road, your scent is still being left behind.
Okay. And so the dog follows that scent.
Yes, sir.
And you have dogs that are trained to give you an indication as to whether or not they have a scent to follow.
Yes, sir. If they have the scent, they'll take a trail.
Okay. And in this particular case, there were a number of times when they took a trail, and there were some times when they didn't.
Yes, sir.
When they took a trail, was that an indication that they were smelling what you had scented them to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have anything else, at least at this point.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Mr. Colvin, whenever you're ready, you can begin, sir. You're welcome. No worries.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Now, would you agree with me that you are remarkably confident in the capabilities of your dogs?
Yes, sir.
All right? And would you agree with me that you are remarkably capable in your abilities to correctly analyze your dog's behaviors and what it means?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I guess where I really want to start with you is some science stuff, because you just kind of talked about some science stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you're not a trained scientist, right?
No, sir.
You certainly haven't had any kind of formal education in developing behavioral experiments or anything like that, right?
That's right.
Okay. But you did say you're familiar with the literature in the area of dog scenting, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you know, because you're familiar with, well, not only are you familiar with it, that's kind of what you do. That's your full-time volunteer job is this VK9 organization, right?
Yes, sir.
And so one of the things you do with VK9 is you're the webmaster for their website, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're the person that stays on top of ongoing developments in scientific literature, right?
Yes, sir, as it becomes available.
Okay. And necessarily, You pay attention to literature related to dog tracking, right?
Yes, sir, if I'm aware of it.
Okay. Now, you know, of course, that there has been ongoing research into dog scent work and handlers, and that's something that's been a continuing source of scientific investigation. Would you agree?
I agree.
And you know, because you stay on top of the literature, that there's been more work in this area over the last 10 years than there had been for years before that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So analyzing what it is dogs can do and what it is handlers can do, this has been something scientists are really getting into nowadays, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that in the world of dog handlers, there has been attempts to formalize and organize the manner within which dogs are both certified and dogs are trained and handlers are certified and trained.
Yes, sir.
Used to be there was an organization called SWGDOG, the Scientific Working Group on Dogs and Orthogonal
Orthogonal.
Detectors. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Coincidentally, dogs and orthogonal detectors abbreviates to dogs, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. An orthogonal detector is a person, or excuse me, not a person, an animal that uses scent to locate things, right?
Yes, sir.
So in some fields, pigs are actually used as orthogonal detectors, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's how they find truffles out in the woods, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. SWGDOG was an organization that was created specifically for the purposes of developing some standards, right?
Best practices, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, they did develop best practices, but when they were created, they were intended to develop some guidelines, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're aware of the fact, because you stay on top of the scientific literature, that it was not all that long ago that the federal government, the National Institute on Standards, determined that the various forensic disciplines had some problems. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, because there was, let's call it bad forensic science coming in, they wanted to get some certainty and get some standards involved in that. So NIST created the OSAC groups. That's the groups working to fine-tune and, in fact, do some real rigor into the analysis of different types of forensic science in the courtroom, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since you're familiar with the NIST Organization of Scientific Areas Committees, you're certainly aware of the OSAC committee related to dogs, right?
Not that committee specifically. I'm only familiar with the SWOG dog people.
Okay. Well, you're aware that SWGDOG was in fact disbanded because the NSIT OSAC group took over for SWGDOG, right?
I didn't know they had been disbanded. No, I did not know that.
Okay. There's been problems in the past with dog handlers going out and claiming their dogs could do things that they couldn't do. Will you agree with me on that?
There were some false reports by handlers, yes.
There was what?
Engineered events by handlers for dogs, yes.
Okay. There was engineered events is a polite way of saying there was handlers out there saying things that weren't true, right?
I wouldn't say that. I characterize it more of the handler planting evidence for their dogs to find. Not as it relates to trailing, but more as it relates to cadaver.
Okay, so if a handler's out there planting evidence, maybe that's not saying something that's not true, but it's really dishonest, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that kind of stuff's happened. There's also been situations where handlers were utilized by law enforcement, and as a result of handlers' errors, people who were innocent have been convicted.
Yes,
Isn't
sir.
that true?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you know that when you come into court and you testify to something, it's a big deal, right?
Yes, sir.
You know that you're testifying under oath,
Yes, sir.
and you certainly know that what you are testifying to has the potential of assisting them in convicting a man on a murder case, right?
Yes, sir.
You understand that what's at stake in this room is potentially the sentence of a man for first-degree murder, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. You take this seriously, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you take this seriously, you have worked very hard to be diligent and thorough, right?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony today, you very intentionally made your testimony today diligent and thorough.
I simply said what I wrote in my report.
Well, that doesn't sound like you answered my question, ma'am. Was your testimony very diligent? In other words, did you try really hard to be accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it thorough? Did you leave out really important stuff?
No, sir.
Okay, so your testimony was diligent and thorough.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's talk about the FBI blowing up things and then detecting human scent off of them. You just referenced an article by the FBI, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that you'd read that article, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you and I have talked about the article before.
We have.
Okay. Because you were the one that found this article, right?
Yes, sir.
You found this article and pointed it out to me.
Yes, sir.
And you did that after I asked you for any scientific research that verified the idea that you could burn up a car and that a dog could detect scent out of that burned up car. That was what I asked you.
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in response to that, you found the FBI article and you sent it to me, right?
Yes, sir.
You actually sent it to them and they sent it to me.
Yeah, same thing.
Same, got to that. Now, this article specifically was done by the FBI to establish an idea. The idea being human scent could survive fire, right?
Yes, sir.
And the FBI's article is not a scientific research study done in a peer-reviewed journal, is it?
Yes, sir. I believe they were published.
That wasn't the question. This isn't a scientific study that was done in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, correct?
It was published in a scientific journal, yes.
Okay? Maybe we have a semantical problem. Peer-reviewed means it's published in a place where other scientists can see the research and try to replicate it or be unable to replicate it. Would you agree that's what peer-reviewed is?
If they want to replicate it at all. They may not choose to.
That's absolutely true. What they do is not my question. Peer-reviewed means it's published, whether scientists can try and replicate it or not replicate it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And peer-reviewed journals have criteria that people have to meet before they get their articles published. There is a reviewing board for peer-reviewed journals, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This article is published by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in their news bulletin, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Their news bulletin is put out by the FBI to send out information to people involved in law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
So when the FBI says, hey, we did this, you may want to look at it. That's important for law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
But it is not a peer-reviewed scientific journal, correct?
Not as you described, that's correct.
Okay. Now, this article talks about the manner within which they did the testing, right?
Yes, sir.
And what they did in the testing was they handled gas cans and they handled pipe bombs, and then they either blew them up or they set them on fire, right?
Well, they blew them up and then took some of the fragments and burned them in gasoline and did not burn other fragments. That's correct.
Okay. And when they did that, they specifically did this with the goal of making it easy to obtain the evidence, correct?
They did it with the goal to determine if the dogs could follow the bomber, the guy who made the bombs or set off the bombs. That was the idea they were working behind, whether the dogs could be a resource in that capacity of IED events.
Okay, that sounded like a long answer that said, no, you're wrong. They didn't do this specifically intending to make it easy to collect the evidence. So is that your answer? I'm
Well,
wrong?
no,
That's
they
not what
collected
said?
evidence, they collected evidence, but it was done to show whether or not it was feasible and possible to collect evidence from exploded devices, yes.
Okay. The article says that, in fact, it was done intending, you know what? Let's look together.
Yes, let's.
I'm sorry, Judge. Can I have a moment? I grabbed the report I didn't highlight. Give me a second, I'm sorry. I'm going to come back to that. I'm sorry. I don't want to waste our time, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Aside from the bomb thing in the FBI article, which we're going to come back to, the other thing you talked about was that your group has done this thing where you've touched something, you've set it on fire, and then you were able to track off of there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This idea of the survivability of human scent out of a burnt-out car, you are not telling us that you have duplicated the circumstance you claim to have done here. That is, detected scent out of a burned-out car. That is not something you're claiming to do by burning up tissue paper, right?
No, sir, I've never torched a car yet.
Okay. And you're not claiming that the FBI says they've done that either, right?
I don't believe they've torched a car either.
Okay. So what you're saying is your dogs can do this, and you know that because in some meta sense, human scent survives fire, therefore it must survive in all times and all circumstances. Is that fair?
No, sir, it depends on the time, it depends on the circumstances.
Okay. Now, you qualified that answer because we've talked about this idea before, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you testified in this courtroom under oath, right?
Yes, sir.
You did that way back in May, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know where I'm about to go, I suspect. When you talked about this idea of human scent surviving fire, I asked you in this courtroom with you in that chair whether or not it was your opinion that human scent could survive a thermonuclear bomb detonation. You remember me asking you that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And in your opinion, you said it was possible. You'd have to test it to find out for sure, but without testing it, you wouldn't rule it out, right?
I said I'd like to try it. I didn't know if it was possible or not. I wouldn't know until I actually tried it.
That's not what you said. What you said was you would like to test it, and you couldn't rule it out unless you did. You remember that?
I said I'd have to test it. I couldn't roll it out until I did that. I don't know if it could or not until I actually try it.
Okay, so you are the kind of person who will not even accept the idea that some things are ludicrous to think a dog could do, such as detecting human scent after a thermonuclear detonation. You're the kind of person who is willing to say, that could happen, I won't agree to it unless I test it, but I'm not going to rule that out of hand, right?
It's an interesting theory. I'd like to try it one day.
Okay. Do you agree with me that it is important for organizations that are invested in making sure forensic science is not being misused to look into dog handlers and the claims that they can make?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you agree with me that because there are examples of dog handlers overstating the abilities of their dogs, that extraordinary claims about dogs' abilities should be looked at very carefully?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you agree with me that the claims you make about what your dogs are capable of doing are extraordinary?
I don't consider it extraordinary. Others may.
Okay. I understand you don't think it's extraordinary. You don't think it's extraordinary because you're very confident in your abilities and you're very confident in your dog's abilities. But you recognize that other people think that your claims are extraordinary, don't you?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you know that other people who are in fact dog handlers think that you can't do what you say you can do with your dogs, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you certainly recognize within the world of people engaged in dog handling, your claims are considered to be extreme.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, you and I have talked about the fact that you've stayed on top of the scientific literature. There's been a lot of stuff having been done in that area recently. And, Mr. Wade, can I have my exhibit? Thank you, sir. And on the website that you maintain, you have a section of scientific articles. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you do that because it's general information you're trying to put out there for the public, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I am showing you what I am marking as Defendant's Exhibit MM. MMM. Yes, sir. Thanks. You recognize that, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
What is this?
That is off our SNF page as it relates to my unit.
Okay? That is from the VK9 website, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's the place where you put scientific articles that we've been talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this time, and that's a true and accurate copy of that page from the website, right?
Yes, sir.
This time the defense would offer MMM into evidence, Judge?
Mr. Wade?
Judge, I'm not sure how it's relevant, but other than that, I don't object.
Happy to
The
respond.
objection's overruled. Triple M is admitted. Thank you.
Permission to publish?
Yes, sir. Well, there's no objection.
No objection.
All right, thank you.
These are the articles you, as the webmaster for VK9, thinks are important for people to see if they go to your website looking for information on dog scent stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Permission to approach, Judge? Thank you. The most recent thing up here is 2007, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, this isn't even a journal article. This is a thesis written by a dog handler, correct?
I don't believe she's a dog handler, no. I believe she's a scientist working for the Air Force.
Okay. I stand corrected. It's a thesis. It's not a published journal article, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You have nothing up here at all about the latest developments in forensic science research, correct?
Correct.
You don't have anything up here at all about the OSOC committees, much less Swig Dog, right?
Swig Dogs they had their own website. I didn't feel it necessary to publish their stuff on mine.
Okay. You aren't a big fan of Swig Dog, right?
I'm neither a fan nor am I against them.
Well, we talked all the way back in March of this year. You recall that? We
Yes,
did it
sir.
by phone, right?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, when we talked about Swig Dog, you said, yeah, I don't agree with everything that they say.
Correct.
Okay. So the group, Swig Dog, which is now defunct because
Right.
they've been superseded, you didn't even agree with the standards required by Swig Dog, right?
No, sir, the thing was, is they were coming up with what they consider best practices. Best practices for somebody who is running a 100-dog kennel is not the same practice that somebody who's housing 2 dogs in their home is going to have.
I understand that. That's an excellent point. Thank you. The other problem you have with Swig Dog is Swig Dog didn't account for the idea that age scent tracking was a thing, right?
They did not even publish that. That wasn't even part of the program.
Right. Because Swig Dog was trying to do standardized hard science, and you're out on the edges. Can you give me that much?
Their standards were being designed to cover a multitude of general baseline practices.
I take it from that answer, no, you won't give me that much.
Yeah.
You will not agree with me that you are out on the edges of dog tracking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Swig Dog isn't anything anymore, but Swig Dog was hardcore science verifiable results, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so Swig Dog didn't even touch the places you're at with your training, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, VK9 puts themselves out. And when I say themselves, I mean you
Yes, sir.
and Ms. Jones, right?
Yes, sir.
Julie Jones, the other handler.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So VK9, meaning you, put yourselves out as specialists in age scent tracking, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your website specifically talks about the fact that your dogs are trained in age scent tracking, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you agree that not everybody even agrees that that's possible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But that is, in some sense, kind of what you guys do, right?
Yes, sir.
Just ask that Mr. Coleman not publish that until it's in evidence.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I apologize. I'm trying to do too many things at once. If the court wants to instruct them to disregard, that was an error.
Mr. Wade,
It wasn't up there that long, Judge. We can just wait until he actually gets it.
is it something that you expect to be admitted, Mr. Colvin?
I do, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
May I approach?
Yes, sir.
Showing you what's been marked as NNN, previously shown to prosecution. You recognize that, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
This is our homepage for our website.
That's an accurate copy of that home page, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Permission to publish?
It's not yet been admitted, I don't think.
Having a hard time?
Triple N is a Nancy.
I'd move to admit triple N into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Wade?
No objection, Judge, and no objection to publishing.
Okay, thank you. Triple N is admitted and you can publish. Thank you. And for the record, is that the one that was mistakenly
Yes, sir.
published to our jury? All right,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Okay. Your website, which we're seeing a copy of here up on the board, specifically says that...
It's not up on, there it goes, okay.
Oh, it's getting there.
I got it.
All right. Specifically says you guys are founded to support law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
And your specialized area includes scent-specific training, right?
Yes, sir.
And a specialty of yours is age scent tracking, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, it's a big deal to be able to do age scent tracking, right?
It's not commonly done, that's correct.
Well, it's not only not commonly done, it's a big deal in the sense that lots of trackers talk a lot about whether or not it's even possible. Right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, in the world of trackers, this idea of age scent tracking is kind of a big deal, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by putting yourselves out there as we are specializing in this, you're kind of putting yourselves out to draw some attention in the world of dog tracking. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If age scent tracking was a thing that you could absolutely rely on, then law enforcement should be using it a lot, right?
Depending on the case, yes, sir.
Point well taken. But law enforcement, not uncommonly, unfortunately, finds themselves in situations where age scent tracking would be a good deal for them, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, all the way back in 2007, this website was up, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All the way back in 2007, you guys were saying you're the specialists in this, right?
Yes, sir.
And yet, law enforcement wasn't beating down your door to get your services, were they?
I would describe it as being down, but we were used routinely, yes.
Okay. So, let's make sure we're on the same page here. Though you wouldn't describe it as beating down your door, you were used routinely because law enforcement was seeking you out and asking for help?
Or we were actually contacting them and offering the service to them if they chose to use it.
Okay, that's a heck of a distinction. If law enforcement is seeking you out and asking for your help, that's one thing. But going to law enforcement and saying, hey, we want to do stuff for you, that's kind of a different dynamic. Would you agree with me?
It is a different dynamic, but both those occasions have happened. Law enforcement has contacted us specifically for age trailing, and then we have also contacted them because many times the law enforcement is not aware of other resources available to them for a different type of search.
Okay. What you're assuming that they aren't contacting you because they're not aware of you, right?
Yes, sir.
Another explanation is they're not contacting you because you guys are considered real fringe. That's a possibility.
That's a possibility, yes.
Okay. In fairness to you, you absolutely don't think that's true, right?
No, I believe that that could be part of the situation also.
Okay. You agree with me that there are no articles in peer-reviewed journals saying that age scent tracking is a thing, right?
That's correct. Not to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any such articles.
Okay. Well, just like we had the opportunity to talk about survivability of human scent in a burned car, we had the opportunity to talk about this before too, right?
Yes, sir.
And I asked you for those articles, and that was all the way back in May, right?
Yes, sir.
And you found the FBI article, haven't found any articles on age scent tracking, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm guessing you've looked, am I wrong?
I've sort of looked around, but unless you're Googling the right words, sometimes things don't come up. But I am unaware of any articles, that's correct.
Okay. Another thing we've talked about in the past is the idea of duly trained dogs. We've had that conversation, right?
Yes, sir.
And that means dogs trained in different types of tracking, correct?
2 disciplines, yes, sir.
Okay. And you're aware, of course, that there's scientific literature out there indicating that cross-training live scent tracking with cadaver tracking can lead to problems in performances, right?
It's specifically in the area of disaster search dogs, yes, sir.
If you're already going to argue with me before I finish the question, you cut out a question. you know?
Sorry.
The question was, there's scientific research in that area, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you know that because we've talked about this.
Yes, sir.
And you know the literature says that that's a problem, right?
Yes, sir.
And you absolutely disagree that that has anything to do with your situation because that literature is talking about search and rescue dogs and your situation isn't search and rescue. Do I understand your position?
Their position of search and rescue dogs as it relates to a FEMA search, disaster dogs, yes, sir.
Okay. But I said your position accurately, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, one of the tracks you did involved taking your dog down to the river, right?
Yes, sir.
And down at the river, you want your dog to do that live scent track, right?
Yes, sir.
And your dog switches over to cadaver, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, a well-trained dog should not switch over from one type of discipline to another discipline willy-nilly, right?
I expect the dog to acknowledge the odor if he comes into it. Yes, I do.
You're in the middle of a live scent track.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And you expect your dog on its own to not only switch the type of track it's doing, but to tell you, I am now detecting cadaver, and then what? Wait for direction as to which way he's supposed to go after that?
Well, sir, not all live scent trails end in a live find. So I want my dog to indicate if he smells human remains because that's not normal.
So not only do you disagree with scientifically published and peer-reviewed journal literature saying this dual training thing is a problem because it can result in the dogs not doing the right kind of tracking, you actually train your dog to specifically switch back and forth, right?
The problem I'm having is that you're relating a article that was written specifically dealing with disaster dogs and working in a disaster situation with a man-trailing cadaver situation. And I don't believe that the two are synonymous.
You know, this is analogous to whether or not burning up a tissue paper is the same thing as scenting out of a burnt-out car. You know, the idea, I suppose, could be the same, but they're really two radically different things. And you're saying what you're doing is radically different than FEMA tracking, right?
FEMA doesn't do tracking, sir.
Or FEMA dual training. My apologies. That's what you're saying. What you're doing is radically different than that, right?
The gist of the article that was published had to do with cross-trained FEMA dogs in a disaster situation, where in a disaster situation, the primary goal that they have is to rescue live people first. If the dog indicates, gives his live find onto a potential dead body, then they waste resources trying to save other live people out of a disaster situation. That's not this situation.
Do you remember what I asked you?
Yes, sir.
What I asked you?
I'm saying it's not equivalent to what we're doing here.
I understand that's what you want to talk about. The question I want you to answer is, you agree with me that the principle the article stands for is that dually trained dogs can lead to poor performances, the dogs inappropriately switching back and forth. That principle carries over to your dogs who are apparently trained to switch back and forth on their own without even being commanded.
I want them to acknowledge cadaver odor, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you agree the principle carries over?
For me, you're talking a disaster situation against a trailing situation. I don't think they're synonymous. I don't believe that they're equal.
Okay. So you do not agree that the principle of duly trained dogs having problems in one scenario, you do not agree that principle has any relevancy to your dog switching back and forth between cadaver and live, right?
Because this is not a disaster situation. Yes.
But the principle of burning tissue paper and scent out of a burnt-out car, that principle definitely relates to each other, right?
One's a smaller version of the same item. It's just a bigger scale of the same issue, whether you have a bonfire or a little fire in your fireplace.
So that means yes.
Yes.
You think that the principal carries over?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things we've talked about a lot, can I have 1 second, Joe?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. All right. Can I just use that? Okay, we finally got to a place where I can talk to you about that bomb article, okay?
Yes, sir.
The bomb article says, this FBI thing?
Yes,
On
sir.
the same page, we're talking about the pipe bombs and the
Yes,
gas
sir.
thing? The article says it was a very carefully constructed test, right?
Yes, sir.
The article says that the explosion and burning of the test materials in this series was conducted to maximize the chances of recovery. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay? It says that the scent sources are immediate, so that's the gas can and the pipe bomb, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
the scent source. Okay. Scent sources are immediately seized and sealed after the fire is out.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And finally, the fire is smaller and not, well, the article doesn't say that. That's me saying that. It's a single source fire, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the article specifically is talking about they're doing things to make it as easy as possible to find the scent after a fire, right?
Sir, when they talk about maximizing scent, what they're trying to do, what they're saying is that they're going to be collecting these scent articles or these pieces up as quickly as possible to prevent anybody else from handling them and thereby depositing their scent on those same items. That's what it means when you maximize scent recovery. You are trying to limit the ability of somebody else's odor appearing on those items that you want the dog to use.
When the FBI says they are maximizing the ability to recover the item
Yes.
by putting it in a bag, that is not the same thing as we don't want anybody else to touch it, ma'am. That's saying we're trying to get this in the best possible way to be able to detect scent.
Yes, sir.
That's what it says.
Yes, sir,
Judge,
that's what
I'm
it,
going to object to the form of the question. He's testifying at this point.
The objection's overruled. He's allowed to lead the witness on cross-examination. Proceed, Mr. Colvin.
Beyond that point, what they did was, as soon as the fire is out, they put it in a bag.
yes, sir.
What you did was take a car that got burnt out, and then a bunch of people examined it, and then it sits in an impound yard, and then 30-plus days later, you go and say you can detect scent out of it.
Yes, sir.
That is radically different than what the FBI did. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
And it is radically different than burning up a tissue and then scenting off of that. Would you agree?
The burning of the tissue was just to see if we could, if the dogs could scent off of a burned item. That's all we did that for.
Question was, it is radically different. Would you agree?
It's different, yes, sir.
All right. So you're not going to agree that it's radically different. To you, it's just a little bit different. 30 days later, after it's been handled by who knows how many evidence technicians sitting in an impound yard versus, poof, dog. That's just a little different.
Well, sir, in my report, I didn't indicate who, I just said I took a scent pad from the driver's seat. I didn't indicate whose odor that was.
Okay.
That's all I did.
Do you know whether or not the scent belongs to that of Bernice Stogsdill?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, you don't even know who that is, do you?
No, sir.
Okay, but if Bernice Stogsdill was the last person to sit in that car after it got torched, by the way,
Yes, sir.
it would make sense. That's who that dog's tracking, right?
If that individual has been in that area where I started the track, then yes, that's relative. If that person has not been in that area, the dog won't take a trail. He'll just stand there looking at me because he doesn't have a matching scent.
Okay, that is an excellent point. Let's come back to that in 1 second, but I promise not to let it go, okay?
Got it.
All right, I just want to be clear with you. Would you agree with me if subsequent to the fire, some lady named Bernice Stogsdill sat in that seat after the fire? I mean, the seat's gone. She's sitting where you're doing the scent pad, right?
Yes, sir.
With me?
Yes, sir.
That would be the best possible scenario to get a scent out of that, right?
It could be, yes. I don't know when she sat in the seat. I don't know who sat in the
I'm asking
seat.
you when she sat in the seat. But we got to be clear, we're on the same page here. You agree with me, if somebody sat in the seat after it's torched, closer in time to when you do your thing, that's the best chance to get a scent versus somebody sitting in that seat before it's all burnt up. After burnt up, before burnt up. After burnt up's a better chance to get a scent, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now we're coming back. Your point that you want to make is only if Ms. Stogsdill, and again, you don't even know who that is. Maybe it's not a person. But for our question, let's assume hypothetically a lady named Bernice Stogsdill sat in that car after it was burnt up. You want the point to be, if Ms. Stogsdill isn't in that area, your dog's not going to track her, right?
That's correct.
Because your dog only tracks the things that it's presented, correct?
It's presented with an odor. It's the dog's job to determine whether it's a matching odor to that present.
Okay. So your point is the dog could not have tracked the hypothetical Bernice Stogsdill if she wasn't in that area, because the dog wouldn't do that.
Correct.
And that is your opinion. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
And most astonishingly, you think you are never wrong when it comes to analyzing the behavior of your dog. Correct?
I do it to the best of my ability. Yes, sir.
In fact, when you have testified previously, I have asked you, do you believe you are perfect when it comes to analyzing your dog's behavior?
Yes, sir.
And you said, yes, sir. Right?
Yes, sir.
I have asked you previously, do you believe your dogs are perfect in their scent detection abilities? They have never made a mistake when it comes to scent detection work. And you said, yes, my dogs are perfect.
If they're performing to the limits of their ability, yes, sir.
Wow.
And it was also related with this case, not just a general open
Now,
end.
let's be careful about the qualifications.
Yes.
When you testified before, you said that you thought your dogs never had made a mistake on a case out in the field.
No, sir. The question was related to this case in this field.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
Did you look at the transcript by any chance, ma'am?
No, sir, I haven't.
You didn't?
No, sir. I don't have a copy of it yet.
They didn't ask you for, they didn't offer you one?
No, sir.
Okay. Whoops, wrong darn thing. You testified on August 5th, right?
Yes, sir.
August 5th of this year,
Yes, sir.
in this courtroom.
Yes, sir.
And you know what you say in the courtroom is recorded, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that things get recorded in the courtroom so we can make a transcript, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know such thing as a transcript exists, you just haven't seen it.
That's
Am I
correct.
understanding you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You previously testified that, let's work up to this. I want to get all the parts of it, make sure we're on the same page.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I misunderstand you. So you agree that no handler in the world is better at analyzing your dogs than you are?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you believe you're perfect when it comes to analyzing the behaviors of your dogs?
Yes, sir.
Okay? And you believe your dogs are perfect in their performance, but only in this case? Is that, maybe I don't understand. Do you think that your dogs are perfect in their performance?
No, sir, the question you asked me was, were the dogs perfect in this case?
Okay. Do you think your dogs are perfect in their performance? Let's go to there.
I think they performed to the limits of the best of their ability, yes, sir.
Okay. Performing to the best of their ability is not the same thing as being perfect, right?
Depends on your semantics. This is a semantical question. If the dog has performed to the best of his ability, he has performed perfectly to the best of the ability he has.
Okay.
Whether you consider it perfect or not, I don't know.
Okay.
And what your definition of perfect is, I don't know.
I am performing to the best of my ability right now. It could fairly be argued I'm doing terrible, okay?
Yes, sir.
Hardly perfect, right? The best of your ability is not perfect, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. You think your dogs perform perfectly?
I haven't been told that they made an error. That's correct.
Looking at page 41, line 8. Can I approach this button?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Have you seen a transcript before?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so does this in fact look like a transcript?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's go to the first page of it. This is a transcript in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
Transcript of your testimony, correct?
Yes, sir.
Happened on August 5th, Friday, August 5th of this year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was in front of this judge.
Yes, sir.
Same DAs were here, right?
Yes, sir.
That lady and I and Mr. Jones and Mr. Brown over there were all here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I got to ask you questions that day, right?
Yes, sir.
And on that day, I asked you, so you're perfect in analyzing your dogs are perfect in their performance, correct?
Okay, the whole question read, okay, so you're perfect in analyzing your dogs are perfect in their performance, correct? I said, yes, sir. I read the question, that's the question.
I agree, that is the question. So you just agreed with me. The previous question was, you said your dogs are perfect in their performance, and you agreed with that then, right?
I'm perfect in analyzing my dogs, and they were perfect in their performance because I have not been told that an error has happened.
Okay. That qualification is a giant deal. Do you recognize that?
It's not. We discussed that before because you kept saying, are the dogs perfect? Or we're perfect. And I said, we haven't been told of a mistake.
Okay. So because of the fact nobody's ever told you your dog made a mistake, you assume perfection? Or you don't believe your dogs are perfect because it's ridiculous to think that a living creature is always perfect in their performance. I think those are radically different concepts. Would you agree?
Well, the being perfect all the time in everything, no, I don't think that's possible. Did they perform correctly in this situation under the parameters we were working under? Yes, I think they did fine. They did the limits of corrected their ability to their training.
I'm not asking you what you think about how they did in this case. I want to talk about what you think about your dogs. Do you think your dogs make mistakes?
They're animals. Yes, they can make mistakes.
Okay, so previously you testified that when I asked you if they were perfect in their performance, and you said, yes, sir.
In this
but
case...
now you're saying because they are living creatures, yes, they make mistakes. right?
No, sir. Well, I said before, you asked if I was perfect in analyzing. I said, yes. And you said, did they perform perfectly? In this case, yes, sir, they have performed to the best of their ability.
Ma'am, I know you want to talk about in this case, they did the best they could. That wasn't the question. You read it.
I know.
That's not what you answered.
They performed
You understand
perfectly to their
that, right?
ability. But to me, you're applying in all cases, no matter what the situation.
The question I asked you literally before the one you just read was, and you believe that these dogs have been perfect on every case, or you would have learned about it. The question literally before the one is every case. And you said yes.
If I haven't been told of an error, then I don't know that they haven't performed correctly.
So until somebody comes to you and says, Ms. Platts, because of the fact that your dog's a living biological creature, we think it made a mistake, until that conversation happens, you assume perfection.
I don't assume perfection. I don't assume we've made a mistake either.
But the only way you'll admit your dogs have made a mistake is if somebody tells you, ma'am.
If an event occurs and you haven't been told that's wrong, you believe it's right. Until somebody comes along and says, hey, by the way, you know this wasn't right. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I didn't realize that.
That, I think, is critical. You assume that your dogs are doing it right until someone comes to you and says they did it wrong. You start with the assumption of correct performance.
Yes, sir, because I have they're trained to back it up.
Okay. If you start with the assumption that your dogs are not making mistakes, then that can create a real problem. You have a bias that your dog's not making mistakes, right?
I don't characterize it that way.
I know you don't. That would be silly of you to characterize it that way because you don't believe your dogs make mistakes.
No, sir, I'm looking at the dog, I'm looking at the situation. I'm basing what I see the dog doing to his performance under other controlled circumstances when I knew what the final product was supposed to be. And if the dog is performing to the same manner in the same situation that I have seen him do in training, I don't start off with the assumption that he's incorrect in this situation.
You don't think your dogs make mistakes, and the truth of the matter is you will defend your dog's non-mistaking, not making mistakes till the end of the day. Fair
No,
enough?
sir, I'm not, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to admit that an error was made or a mistake was made when there's no evidence to that.
Ma'am, I haven't asked you one time to admit to a mistake, have I?
No, you keep asking for perfect. And lack of perfection, you're indicating that it must be a mistake.
You think that if you admit your dogs aren't perfect, that's the same thing as saying they made a mistake?
No, sir, that's not what I'm saying.
All right. I haven't asked you once to say that your dog's made a mistake. All I'm asking you is, do you agree they can?
Yes, it's possible.
Okay. And until somebody proves to you they made a mistake, you're going to have the assumption that they did it correctly, right?
Yes, sir.
And now we have a problem, because convincing you that your dog's made a mistake would be really, really hard. Do you agree?
You have to have, I mean, the thing is, for me, is the dogs performed a certain action. They performed it the way they have been taught to do it. They gave me certain feedback. Unless that feedback gets investigated and corroborated, then I'm not sure if they were right or wrong. I'm not going to say one way or the other.
The question I asked you was, convincing you that your dog's made a mistake would be really, really, really hard.
No, sir, it's not hard.
Really?
Yes, sir.
You and I have talked previously about the fact that if your dog detected a scent and we brought in a PhD, a doctor, a science doctor with a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, and we used scientific techniques and they couldn't find any scent, you'd believe your dog over a scientist with scientific instruments, right?
Well, part of the problem with scientific instruments is they haven't been calibrated low enough to detect what some of the dogs are detecting. They are just now starting to come up with that ability.
Okay. The question was, you would believe your dog over the scientist with scientific instrumentation. And I think what you just said is not only is that true, but it's absolutely true. You're very firm in the fact that your dogs outperform science, right?
No, sir, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that science is still catching up with the dog's ability.
You just said your dogs outperform science, right?
All dogs are outperforming science right now.
Okay.
All scent detection dogs are performing above what science is being able to corroborate.
Okay, so your dogs are better than science, right?
To the level of the detection, yes.
Okay. So, why did we start talking about this?
I don't
It's
know.
going to be really, really hard to convince you. You're not going to accept science because your dogs are better than science.
No, sir, I'll accept science. It's just the problem is science can't catch up, hasn't caught up with them yet.
If the scientists say your dog's wrong, you're not going to accept that, man. Because your dog's better than science.
Science isn't as good as the dog. How about that? We can go the other way, too.
All right. We'll do that. The fact of the matter is it's going to be really, really hard to convince you your dog was wrong.
No, sir, it's not hard at all. All you have to do is show the evidence to the contrary. If you do an investigation and it proves up that the dog's wasn't corroborated, I'll accept that.
It's never happened in your lifetime, right?
I've had feedback that so far, with everything that I've gotten come back, the dogs have been correct. There's a few instances where they can't corroborate one way or the other.
You have testified that you seek validation on your dog's tracks, correct?
Correct.
Validation is another way of saying cooperation, right?
Yes, sir.
Validation and cooperation is some independent evidence outside of the dog track indicating the dog track is correct, correct?
Yes, sir.
You seek that out, but you don't need that for your belief in your dog's abilities.
No, sir, I do that to verify what the dogs are doing.
But ma'am, you believe your dogs don't make mistakes. Why do you need it? You don't need it. You just want it for guys like me that don't just accept your dogs are always correct, right?
No, sir, I do it for my own information also.
Okay. You think that law enforcement animals are well trained, right?
Yes, sir.
You think that they do a good job. Wait, first off, you respect law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
VK9 is founded to support law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
You guys are out there backing them up every day, right?
If they need us, yes, sir.
Okay. And so because you're out there trying to support them, you respect them, right?
Yes, sir.
And because you respect them, you in fact think law enforcement does a good job generally.
Yes, sir.
And you think specifically canine cops, law enforcement that work with dogs, they do a good job of training their dogs, right?
Yes, sir.
And you think that law enforcement should aspire to have dogs trained to the abilities of your dogs, correct?
No, sir.
Pardon me?
No, sir. Their police dogs have a different function than trailing dogs do. Police dogs have to deal with apprehension, and that we come in after we do the track that we do. Most tracking dogs are trained for ground disturbance, hot tracks. Trailing dogs are trained mostly for scent-specific and older tracks that are not within the scope of the police dog. For most police dogs, you have to get a dog there, from what I've been told, 15 with a max of 30 minutes after the event if they expect the dog to take a track.
Are you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The question I said, which you didn't answer, by the way, the question I said was, do you think law enforcement should train their dogs to the level of your dogs? Your dogs are what law enforcement should aspire to.
No, sir. Difference of thing.
You just went on. You already got an answer.
Okay.
What you wanted to answer. The answer to my question is, no, you don't think law enforcement should aspire to the level of your dogs, right? And
If they
you
have
previously
trailing dogs, then yes. If they have tracking dogs, it's not going to happen.
When I asked you this question before, you function at a level of perfection that law enforcement should aspire to. Answer, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So now you agree with that?
But the problem is the police dogs are not man-trailing dogs, sir.
I understand, ma'am. You're
All right.
doing stuff way ahead of everybody else. I get that. But the fact of the matter is, you would testify under oath that law enforcement should aspire to the level of perfection that your dogs are trained at. That is astounding. Do you agree?
Yes, sir. If they have a trailing dog, they should.
It is, in fact, a silly question to even suggest to you that your dogs did any of these tracks wrong, right? That's a silly thing to ask you to consider seriously.
Why is it silly?
You don't think it's silly?
To ask the question, no.
Point well taken. I can ask whatever I want, but it would be ridiculous for you to seriously entertain that your dogs screwed this up, right?
No, sir.
Okay, well, you absolutely believe that you are absolutely perfect in assessing their ability and that the dogs are perfect in their performance. That's what you think, man.
In absence of knowing of any errors and seeing them work and knowing how they were working in this case against control situations in training and the behavior is the same, I don't see where they would never have been made. If you are aware of different, then I'd like to know.
You have testified today that your dogs are certified, right?
Yes, sir.
These dogs in particular, that conducted these tracks, they were certified, right?
Yes, sir.
They were certified by your agency,
Yes, sir.
VK9.
Yes, sir.
They were also certified by NAPWADA or VAPWADA, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. VK9 does not certify dogs in detecting scent out of burnt-out cars, does it?
No, sir.
VK9 does not certify dogs in age-scent tracking, does it?
No, sir.
VK9 models its certain, you're the boss at VK9 these days, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're the top, start to say top dog, that seems in. You're in charge, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you know about the certification stuff at VK9. VK9 models its certification procedures after NAPWADA,
Yes, sir. We moved that direction.
North American Police Work Dog Association, right?
Yes, sir.
NAPWADA is a well-known organization throughout the country in the field of dog handling, correct?
Yes, sir.
NAPWADA does not certify dogs in burnt-out car scents, right?
Yes, sir.
And it does not certify dogs in age scent tracking, correct?
Yes, sir.
NAPWADA's not doing that. If you guys model after NAPWADA, you can't certify in it either, right?
Correct.
In fact, to your knowledge, there is no agency anywhere that certifies dogs in burnt-out car scent detection and age scent detection, right?
Yes, sir. I'm also unaware of anybody that certifies a dog to work in the rain or a dog to work in the snow or a dog to work at night or any of those other situations. That's training. That event occurs in training.
So, to your mind, working at night and in the rain and in the snow is as difficult as burnt-out car scent detection and age scent detection.
No, sir. All I'm stating is that there's no certifications for those aspects either.
Okay. But the fact remains that experts in the field of dog scent say age scent isn't a thing. And yet, you're saying it's comparable to doing scent work in the snow. right?
Sir, we can't even agree on what an age is.
Okay? You and I may not be able to, but what we can agree upon is that multiple experts in this field agree it ain't a real thing.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Okay. And I just want to be real clear on this point. Your own agency isn't doing certification on these things that you say your dogs do, right?
Correct. That's trained. That's the continuing education part. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
You recognize that the criticism you and Ms. Jones have received goes beyond this case and my talking to you today, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you're aware of the fact that you and Ms. Jones have been in the media previously on other cases, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're in the media on this case, right?
Yes, sir.
But you've been in the media on other cases too, right?
Yes, sir.
You were in the media back in California, and experts in the field of dog tracking were saying what you guys could do then.
Your Honor,
was-
I'm going to object. All of this would be hearsay. Certainly doesn't form the basis of her opinions.
He's just asking if she's in the media, right? Is that,
And I'm confronting her with media reports that she's aware of, she's previously acknowledged.
okay, the objection's overruled.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Because we've talked about it before, right?
You mentioned the quote out of the paper. Yes, sir.
Okay. And previously, we talked about the fact that the head of the National Police Bloodhound Association was reported as saying, you can't do what those ladies are saying they can do.
And I've also had a past president of the same organization who was one of my mentors who taught me to do it.
Okay. So some people, way fringy, absolutely you can do it. Some people who are experts say you can't do it, right?
The experts can't agree among themselves at times.
Okay. But when you're way out on the fringe, the burden should be on you to establish you can do it. Shouldn't be on other people to prove to you can't do it. Isn't that fair?
It's fair, and if this was the only case I'd ever done an age track on, then I would say you're probably valid, but this is not the only case I've done this age track work on.
But this is the only case you've done a burnt-out car scent.
No, sir.
Ma'am, you just testified you're not out there torching cars up, right?
Not for practice, no.
Okay. And you had some other case where you did a scent and the car had been burned. I understand. You talked about that.
Yes, sir.
One other case, and that wasn't age scent, and you weren't detecting scent out of the car based upon the same circumstances that you had here. It was different, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, just the same way the case in California was different from this case.
All right. The case in California, the person you were looking for, her body was found 6 miles away from where you said it was, right?
No, sir. We never
You
said
were
that.
in an Indian village outside of San Diego, and they wound up finding the remains 6 miles away from that Indian village.
That road, they were found on the outskirts of town, up a locked gate road.
Okay. So.
And we were also asked, our search was terminated at that village, and we were asked to leave, so we never were able to conclude that case.
So you would have got there, right?
I believe eventually, yes, sir.
Absolutely, because if you had enough time, your dogs would have done it, right?
No, sir, we're in the process of working out the parameters of where the scent was and was not when we were asked to leave.
You were going to get it for sure. Just like here, if the cops wouldn't have stopped you, your dogs would have figured out, oh, we're not supposed to be in the river, we're supposed to be in Wolf Gulch and
No,
6
sir.
miles away.
That's not what I said.
Well, I'm asking you a question. If you would have had enough time, would your dogs have finally figured out the body's not in the river?
If we, I'll say, known that, it's possible, but the situation that we worked it was to the best of our abilities at the time we did it.
You know, you have to be convinced your dogs did something wrong before you'll believe it. But you know for a fact the body of Ms. Bergfeld is not found in the river. It's found 6 miles away. You know that.
Yes, sir, but cadaver is considered a generic odor, not tied to a specific person.
So, now we get down to it. Your dogs aren't wrong. They're just scenting somebody else's dead body.
All they're telling me is that they have this odor, and you normally don't find human remain odor at a park.
Okay. So your dogs aren't wrong. There's a dead body in the river. Still?
I don't know, I haven't tested it lately. It could still be there, it could not.
I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding you, because I think I might be. Are you saying there's really a dead body in the river in 2007 when your dogs are in the river?
I don't know. All I know is the dogs detected that odor, they responded as they have been trained to respond, and indicated that that odor was present.
Okay. And that is a very different thing than saying, you know there was a dead body in the river, right?
Based on where the dogs were indicating, I would have to believe that it was somewhere on or near the river because of the water,
Okay.
and the dogs trying to enter the water and deal with the water.
One time when you talk about it, you talk about the dogs responding in the way he's been trained,
Yes, sir.
right? And then the other way, when you talk about it, it's there is a body there. So do you think the dogs are telling you there is a body in the river? Or are you saying it's your interpretation of the dog's behavior, both of which are subject to the possibility of error?
What the dogs are telling me is that they're detecting that odor. It could have been very well a body that was there and later moved, but the odor is still remaining. It could also mean that there was a body in the river that hasn't, that's still there. But all it means is that they detected that odor at that location, and they conveyed that to me.
And do you think they could be wrong?
For what, that there was a body there and then moved, or that there was a body in the river?
That there's a body at all?
If there was no body at all, I should not have gotten the indications from the dogs that I received.
So does that mean they could be mistaken?
Not with the body characteristical changes. They smelt, when, there's two types of alerts that the dogs do. Yes, sir.
I don't care what you're reading.
Okay.
Do you agree they could be wrong?
It's possible.
Okay. You do agree the dogs could be wrong, right?
Based on their training, it's possible. But based on their training, I don't consider it likely.
Okay. But that's a heck of a difference from you dogs are always right unless somebody can convince you differently, man.
I consider it unlikely. But if you can show evidence to the contrary that there was nobody there and that there's nobody that has been there, then I would gladly concede to the point.
But again, you're putting it on me
Yes,
to
sir.
prove to you. You're the one who's making the extraordinary claim. When you make an extraordinary claim, you assume the burden of proof, man.
Well,
I
I
shouldn't have to prove to you that something outlandish isn't true.
what, that they smelled cadaver odor at that river?
The fringe things your agency says they can do.
We don't consider them French.
I
Others
know
do.
you don't, but you know, after the last time you testified, your testimony was in the media, right?
It was being quoted out of context, correct.
It's not what I asked you. You know your testimony was reported on in the media, correct?
One sentence was published in the paper, yes, sir.
Okay. And you know that trackers that read about your testimony last time contacted us, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that we put on a witness talking about what other trackers said about you. You know that, don't you?
Yes, sir.
And the reason you know that is after that happened, prosecution told you what our witness had said, right?
No, sir, I actually caught the closing arguments.
Oh, okay. I always wondered how you knew. Now I know. You saw the closing arguments, you heard what I said, and you went out and specifically ran down one of the trackers that contacted us to get in their face about them disagreeing with you, didn't you?
No, sir.
Yes. Feel free to stretch. We're ready for you, ladies and gentlemen. You can proceed when you're ready, Mr. Coleman. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't remember what you said. You agree that you contacted that lady that had contacted us to express your displeasure with her position on the validity of your work?
No, sir. What I contacted her on was that what was conveyed in the closing arguments was not it was not in the case as far as what was attributed to her, and I contacted her to find out why, in fact, she was saying that when that's not how it happened.
Okay. It frankly made you pretty mad that the credibility of your agency and of the reliability of your work was questioned. Would you agree?
No, sir. My question to her was, why was she changing her story?
Ma'am, that lady didn't even testify at any previous hearing.
I know that.
All right. So, let's talk about, VK9, real quick. You said there's 5 of you in 2007?
I believe so. It was, I don't know if Steve Kennedy was still a member then, but it was Carol Perry. I believe he was ill. Sandy Sperry, myself, Julie Jones, and Margie Spencer, I believe, was still there, although she was but she resigned several months later.
Okay. VK9, 5 members in 2007. 2 of those members were qualified to go out on a case, is what you had told us in March of this year. You and Julie Jones, right?
She and I were the ones who came here, yes.
That's not what I asked you. In March of this year, you told us that the 2 people that were capable of going out on a case were you and Julie.
The 2 people capable of doing this case, yes, came out.
All right. Which is different. So 2 people could do it, right?
No, sir. The problem is the other people couldn't come.
You told us in March there was only 2 of you
Yes.
that were qualified to do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that different than being able to come out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it your testimony now that all 5 members of 2007 VK9 could come out here and do this case if their schedules permitted?
Yes, sir.
All right. Margie didn't even have a dog, ma'am.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
She couldn't come out and track. She didn't have a dog.
That's right.
Okay.
So she wasn't qualified to come out.
The only two people that were qualified to come out in 2007 are the same only two people VK9 has available today. 9 years later, you got two people, same two people, right?
No, sir.
All right.
We have other members
Because
now.
your agency has grown so much?
No, sir, man trailing teams are always very small.
Okay. VK9 is an extraordinarily small group. Would you agree?
It's about average with most with most trailing teams. The state team in Virginia only has 3 members.
Okay. Your VK9 group is not only on the fringe of what you can purport to be able to do, your VK9 group hasn't grown in who it's sending out on these cases in 9 years.
That's correct.
All right. When you arrived in Grand Junction, you got these scent pads prepared, correct?
Yes, sir.
These scent pads, you were make sure that you didn't contaminate them and all that stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
You took the scent pads, or made the scent pads from the evidence law enforcement gave to you, correct?
Correct.
You at no time were offered anything other than Ms. Bergfeld's dress and shorts that belonged to Mr. Jones, correct?
Correct.
That necessarily limits all of the possible responses that your dogs could provide, correct?
Correct.
It is not possible for, even you agree, it is not possible for your dog to scent track something that they do not have a scent to track from, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it is not possible that we could know what your dogs would do with other suspects, correct?
Correct.
And necessarily, because no other scent pads were prepared, it's not possible to know whether or not your dogs would have hit on a scent pad prepared for the scent of District Attorney Rubenstein, right?
That's correct.
Or Sergeant Smith.
Correct.
Because the idea of using a scent pad for somebody that you know couldn't have been there didn't occur to you.
It wasn't provided. That's correct.
Well,
We didn't do that. That's correct.
this idea we're talking about is a negative control. By using a scent pad that you know wasn't there, you are creating a scenario where you can determine whether or not the dog is in fact doing things improperly, right?
But we did do negative scent work. Even though we were using Mr. Jones's shorts, we went to areas that the dog gave a clear negative.
No, ma'am. What you did was you reported your dog not finding anything. That's different than actively scenting your dog on a scent that you know was not there. That's a negative control. Using a scent pad for the person of a prosecutor who couldn't have possibly been there, that tells you very distinctly something's wrong. If your dog finds that scent, that's really different, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, sir.
And you absolutely have the ability to say to Sergeant Smith, let's use a negative control to verify the quality of the work that my dog does, right?
It could have, yes.
And you didn't.
No, sir.
That would have been some modicum of proof that your dogs were doing what you say they were, right?
It would be proof that they were only taking trails for which they had a scent. If they were given a scent article that did not have a corresponding scent trail, that's all that shows.
Okay. The reality is, even that minimal concept that is like Science 101, utilization of negative controls, even that minimal concept, that's not something you feel is necessary because you believe your dogs are infallible.
That's not standard practice for any man-trailing team when they deploy.
Well, but ma'am, let's not forget, You want it to be me that proves to you your dogs are mistaken. You won't even give me the tools to try. Right?
It's not a normal practice to have negative controls on active searches for any bloodhound team or any trailing team.
You know that there is a documented, well-known scientific phenomenon called handler bias, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you know that handler bias happens when a handler cues their dog to do things, correct?
Yes, sir.
Cueing is the dog reacting as if there's a scent based upon something the handler's doing, correct?
Correct.
Handler cueing, and you agree with me, this is well-known scientific principle stuff. People know this happens, right? This cueing.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the cueing is why you made such a big deal out of, I don't want to know anything about this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you know that handlers can unconsciously cue their dogs, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you know information about the case, you know it's possible that could affect how your dog does their tracks, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, it's fair to say that you don't believe that's ever happened in your work, right?
We try to mitigate it.
You think it's never happened in your work, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
You think it's never happened in your work.
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not going to give you a yes or no when I don't know if it's true.
Okay. So, if you don't know if it's ever happened, there's no reason to not have your tracks videotaped so we can see your behaviors, to see if another expert could say that might be cueing going on there, right?
If the Mesa County had wanted to do that, I would have had no objection.
And yet, you didn't do anything to say, hey, why don't you videotape this? Cueing is a problem. It really happens. I don't know if I'm doing it. Let's videotape me to see.
I'm not going to make that assumption. That's for the people, that's for the investigators who are running this case to make that conclusion.
Okay. So it's up to them
Yes, sir.
to come to you with ideas on how to corroborate your dog's do with it. You say they can.
No, sir. Videotape evidence of the run does not corroborate anything.
No, but it sure as heck could be evidence that you're screwing it up, right?
It's possible.
Okay? And you didn't ask anybody to do it to prove it wasn't, because it's on all of us to prove your dogs can't do what you said.
No, sir. Videotaping is that department's responsibility whether they choose to videotape or not. It's not my call to make. It's theirs because it's their evidence that they'd be copying.
Cadaver scent. You keep calling it decomposition is what the dog is scenting. By decomposition, you mean the cells from a human being are breaking down, right?
The decomposition of the body, yes.
That's not what I asked you. Decomposition scent is the scent put off by human cells that are breaking down, correct?
Yes, sir.
Human cells are contained in any number of fluids, right?
Yes, sir.
Blood,
Yes, sir.
semen,
We don't consider that cadaver odor.
well, you just agreed with me. Decomposition scent comes off of human cells that are breaking down, right?
Body cells, we don't consider semen to be a cadaver fluid.
Well, blood is not a body cell, it's a blood.
But blood is, how can I phrase this? We don't consider semen or feces or fingernails or hair clippings to be part of a standard decomp picture.
Okay. For you, what gives off cadaver scent?
For me, it's the rotting down or breaking down of the human body after death or when death has occurred.
So does it have to be a body?
It could be a part off a body.
Could it be blood?
It could be.
Okay. So it has to be a body or blood?
Blood is normally not Normally, blood is associated with the body. Normally, you don't go around bleeding all over the place.
Okay. If somebody bleeds on this counter or table, and then you go with your dogs, do cadaver scent, are they going to hit on cadaver scent on a pool of blood or no?
My dogs would, yes.
Okay. Why do you stress my dogs? With other dogs who are cadaver scent trained, not?
There are some dogs that are being trained for blood only, and there are some that are being trained for HR.
All right. But your dog's going to hit on blood, right?
Yes, sir.
The only things your dogs are going to get hit on are body parts or blood.
Or the smell associated to the decomp, yes, sir. So if you die on this carpet and start to die here, and then somebody comes along and picks up the body, the decomp odor is still in that piece of carpeting.
Okay. And that decomp odor happens instantaneously at the time of death.
They don't know when it exactly starts.
Okay? Well, you know the body of Ms. Bergfeld is found 6 miles away from the river. Do you have some reason to think Ms. Bergfeld's body was held in that river for some length of time?
I don't know if it was in the river or next to it.
Okay, so you think her body was left there?
I have human decomp odor in that space. I can't determine whose body it was. Because cadaver scent is considered a generic scent.
But wait a minute. You just testified when you were talking to the prosecutor that you tracked Ms. Bergfeld's scent all the way down Bridgeport Road to the river and it doesn't leave.
Yes, sir. Her live scent trail does not leave. Yes, sir.
And you say there's cadaver scent there.
And when we did cadaver, the dogs were indicating there was cadaver odor there.
And now you're saying you don't know if it was Paige Bergfeld. It was just cadaver scent. Anybody could have been dead there.
That's correct.
Okay. I got a ways to go, Judge. I'm not sure which. This is a good breaking point. I'm happy to go as long as you want, though.
Well, let's see, we only have about 50 seconds before 5 o'clock, so I guess we'll break a little bit early. Tomorrow is Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, so we have a 9 o'clock start time like almost all of our mornings. We're breaking at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon as well. Hope you all have a good evening. We'll see you back at 9 o'clock. Thank you again for being so punctual for us. It really helps us to move the trial along efficiently. I appreciate it so much. Please rise for our jury. If you could just be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for us, please, Ms. Platts.
Yes, sir.
Anything else for the record? Mr. Rubenstein?
No, sir.
Mr. Colvin?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll see you all back at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're in recess. Thank you.